The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. I'm very pleased today to have a guest on our show who's been on the show before, and she has so much to talk about that I always invite her back. Now, I want to say this, principals and teachers have been the frontline workers for children during the coronavirus pandemic. They have quickly moved to bring classrooms online and found fun and interesting ways to keep children across the U.S. engaged. This is what working from home looks like for teachers. It's very, very difficult, but we are talking to somebody who has not closed her school, and there is a reason, and that's my first question to you. Bubli Dandiya, what is the reason that all the schools have been closed and yours has been opened?
Well, I think that most schools did end up opening soon after the fall. I think we were amongst the first ones to open, and we kept with the schedule of the Palm Beach County calendar, school board calendar. I think that, I give all the credit to our teachers who very quickly, rolled with the punches and made sure that they mastered the art of virtual teaching. They worked really hard, kept our students very engaged, and came up with a curriculum that really worked for them. And our parents were very complimentary and said that they got to see how we teach and how we approach our children and how we approach the curriculum. And it was really a great experience for our parents to really see it firsthand. And it worked really well. I have to say that, as well as a virtual platform can work, I wouldn't say it in any way replaces an in-person learning environment, but it really did serve the purpose.
That brings up the question, what has been the biggest challenge for you and why?
Well, the biggest challenge, of course, has been that, I would say 60% of the children wanted to start in person, 40% of the students wanted to be virtual. And the biggest challenge was how to staff these different needs, because if you were going to do a virtual program, you would have to hire a teacher just to do the virtual program. And it was a big strain on the community, because the teachers we had to be also teaching the 60% of the children who were in person, and they couldn't split themselves in two and do both. So that was the challenge, but we made it through, and we were fortunate enough to have our own Montessori teachers who would have, let's say, ordinarily retired, who stuck on and stayed and did the virtual for us. So it worked out.
Bubli, teachers have said to me, I miss seeing the students' faces, the banter, the fun in the classroom. That's what they've said. So I want to know, how do you think your students have adapted? Because a lot of them couldn't see each other and couldn't play with one another and couldn't do work together. So with that in mind, what do you think has been the situation of how children have adapted to your situation in your school?
Well, I think that our students did not feel as isolated, because the way our learning happens is with a lot of interactive work, So the children had to be paired together with other children to do projects. They were, constantly speaking with each other. It was not like a traditional classroom where the teacher speaks and the students listen. It is very interactive. You give them an opportunity to speak. You give them an opportunity to ask questions. It is pretty much like an in-person classroom, except that it is online. Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking that Montessori schools have been around for a long time and they've been very popular. There must be something about the way things operate in your schools. So, can you tell our audience what is the difference between what happens at the Montessori school as opposed to a regular public school?
Yes, not necessarily just a public school, I would say a traditional school, which is what we are all used to and we were all raised with. The traditional school has a very different model than a Montessori school. Um, the model that you and I are used to is having one source of information, and that is the teacher. And the students are there to absorb that information, and they are receiving the information, and there is one person giving the information. Now, if there are different levels of abilities in a classroom, even though it is supposed to be a 1 year span. I mean, somebody is just 10 years old and somebody's almost 11 years old, in the same classroom. um, it becomes very difficult for the teacher to ascertain who is understanding the concept, who has understood the concept and moved on, and who is struggling with it. Because obviously, it's like I said, if it's not interactive and the children are not allowed to speak their minds, ask their questions constantly, it's not clear. And so what happens is that you are teaching the middle group, the group that is just where they need to be with your lesson. But there are some who will have not understood it, and there are some who are way beyond it and are waiting for everyone else to catch up. So here you have a challenge for the teacher who is teaching in a traditional classroom with an extremely difficult model to serve every child's needs.
You're right.
In a Montessori environment, we have a mixed age group, which is a very, very important, crucial tenet of the Montessori education, that you have a 3 year age span. So if you have first grade, you'll also have second and third in the same room. And what happens there is that the learning is three-dimensional, project oriented, and any concept that there is to be learned is learned through actual manipulative hands-on lessons. So it's experiential learning. It's not abstract learning by looking at the blackboard or looking at a book. It's actually using your hands and mind and sensorial experience for every child. Now, what happens is that as the children are presented a lesson by a teacher, um, preferably individually, sometimes in small groups, if they are of matching abilities and understanding. And once they have been presented the lesson, they can go back and practice it as much and as many days, for as many days as they want, till they master that concept.
That brings up the very important question, and that is, how we asked it before. How have your students adapted? But really, what I want to know is that there's been a real issue about Black Lives Matter. I'm bringing that up because, needless to say, it's happening right now, and the question becomes: are your students as diverse as they should be in your particular school? Do you have all different ethnicities?
We do have, and we always want to have as many ethnicities as possible. But I will say that it is unfortunate that it is not in the proportion that we would love. We do have African American families, we do have Latin families, we do have European families, but it's not as if it's, 50, 30, 40, it's mostly maybe 20%.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's not nearly enough. However, as a school, we have a big focus on teaching children about diversity and different cultures, acceptance, and respect for each other's beliefs, whether it's yours or not.
So, do you believe in this whole notion of critical thinking? I heard about that from lots of teachers that they're told to teach critical thinking. Now, the question becomes, what about the other children? Can't we, shouldn't we, I should say, shouldn't we learn a lot about other ethnicities instead of only, the African American history? What do you think about that?
Yes, absolutely. It is extremely important to raise global citizens. And that is something that Montessori is very, very focused on. That it doesn't matter what, country, culture, religion, color, none of that matters. What matters is, the understanding that every culture, every religion has its own rationale and own way of thinking, and it is our job to teach the children to respect that. So
Yeah.
we have in our school, for example, every year a festival which we call our Cultural Peace Festival, and in during that time each classroom picks a certain culture and studies it in depth and then makes a presentation to the whole school via a play, a song, a dance, or making up research that they discuss. And each classroom is given a canopy, a gazebo, which they decorate to be able to share as much as they can about that particular culture they have studied. And so there are, say, 10 booths in the school, and everyone goes through those booths to learn, and they're presenting it to each other. And this is the way those cultures become real to them.
Yeah.
And they begin to see how we may be different in many ways, but really and truly we are all very similar.
Self-esteem is a very important thing for people, regardless of age. There's no question about that. Now, does your school foster a program that is giving the kids to really feel good about themselves? Because needless to say, a lot of students today have a lot of psychological problems due to, of course, the pandemic and various other reasons. But I'm just curious, do you teach them to have self-confidence, self-esteem? What is the foundation of their sense of self?
Well, the thing that I opened this school, as you know, for my own children in 1995. And prior to that, I had some experience working as a Montessori teacher. I, to me, the most crucial thing to focus on in a learning environment is making sure that every child in that environment is feeling unconditionally respected, is feeling nurtured, is feeling accepted, and has a healthy sense of self, meaning thereby that they're self-aware, they know their gifts and celebrate them, they understand their challenges and work on them, and are comfortable in their skins, knowing who they are and what their purpose in life is.
Yeah.
And if you start that at a very young age, even as early as threes and fours, I believe that these children grow up with a totally different sense of self that's solid, that's realistic, that's authentic, and and that is what gives them the confidence to be who they are.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, I'll tell you something. A lot of different schools, that's what they talk about. They talk about the fact that, you know, kids really need to be motivated. They need to give themselves a chance to really fulfill their dreams. Now, that's the question that I have for you. Has this school fulfilled your dreams?
Not only has it fulfilled my dreams, I think it has fulfilled many families' dream and many children's dreams, because we have seen the success that has come out of the environment that has been created, which is in the Montessori lingo called the prepared environment. And the prepared environment is one where the energy is how it should be, where the children are completely comfortable, fearless, not stressed, not feeling competitive, just being who they are and following their own curiosity, with the teachers simply being the catalysts and guides present to stoke their curiosity and teach them whatever they are moving towards. And so what happens is that the dream for every parent, what does every parent dream of for their child? They dream of having an environment that can develop their child's intellectual, social, emotional skills in a loving environment where they are able to discover themselves.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in traditional environments, it's very difficult to achieve this because of the model of 20 kids in a classroom and a teacher sitting in front of them and the children just listening to what the teacher has to teach, and this whole race to cover the curriculum by this semester, this needs to be finished by this semester, this needs to be done. That just takes away from a holistic environment where you can still achieve all of this but not inundate the kids with so much academic pressure that they have no time to think about life themselves, about relationships, about interaction, about conflict resolution. They need the time to think and absorb these ideas and understand how life works. How
Yeah.
do we conduct ourselves in this community? How do we treat each other? You need time for that. And there is no time in a traditional environment for this because all that's happening is class after class after class.
Yeah. You know, you and I met at a TED conference and I
Yeah.
heard you speak. And a
Mhm.
lot of what you're talking about right now was what you talked about then.
Mhm.
But now we've moved on and
Mhm.
situations have occurred that are really traumatic for most kids and for parents as well, and for teachers and for
Mhm.
principals.
Mhm.
Now, I want you to give our audience the last word because, needless to say, you have a success on your hands and kids are really responding. So, what would you tell other teachers and principals that will leave them with the most important advice?
The most important advice would be, I think, that just, follow the child. Don't have the child follow you. If you follow the child will take you where they need to go. And don't impose your own spirit and your own ideas on the child. Allow the child to become who he's destined to become. And you empower them to become that. And don't worry about this gap we have had with COVID, where we've had a challenge with the virtual teaching and all of that. Children are extremely resilient as long as they can feel the love and the respect and the nurturing and knowing that you really care. The learning will all fall in place. It
Great.
will fall in place. They will catch up before you know it. and as long as you are able to nurture their emotional health.
That's great advice. Bubbly. Now, last but not least, your school is called the Turtle River Montessori School. If people want to get in touch with you to learn how to change situations that are not working out and learn a little bit about your Montessori methodology, how do they do that?
They could go on our website, which really has a lot to offer. It's just simply turtlerivermontessori.com, or they could call the school anytime. It's 561-745-1995. That was the year we started. And I'll be more than happy to, take the time to talk to them.
That's terrific. So my guest today has been Miss Bubli Dandiya. Now, she had a clear vision of what she wanted for two daughters who were 3 and 8 years old at the time she started, and she has many degrees which also back up her conviction that children deserve an environment that is fully developed, developing their intellectual, physical, social, emotional, and inner potentials. And I want to thank her for being on the Susan Brender Show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to have been on it. Thank you.